Ma'am, you're $1.20 short.
I have it at home.
Hold him till morning?
We don't do that anymore. Store policy.
Let her keep the milk. Is that you, Dan?
This isn't your business, Reyes.
It's $1.20. Where's the harm? Policy is policy. Not in my building wearing my company's jacket. Then I'll take the jacket off.
Now I'm just a man buying a stranger a can of soup. You're done. Terminated, effective now.
The last delivery of the night is always the coldest. Daniel knew that the way he knew his own heartbeat. He stood in the loading bay of the Halston Street Market with frost biting through the seams of his jacket, holding a crumpled slip of paper that said he owed more than he had. $41 short on Ellie's school fees. The deadline was Friday. It was Wednesday, and somewhere in the fluorescent hum of that store, a woman in a thin coat was being turned away at the register for the price of a loaf of bread and a can of soup. Turned away by a man who smiled while he did it. Daniel did not know that woman owned the building. He only knew one thing, the thing his wife had taught him before she died. You do the right thing when it costs you. That is the only time it counts. Let me take you back 6 days, to the Monday it all began, because to understand a man, you have to understand what he carried. Daniel Reyes was 34 years old, and he had been a delivery driver for the Halston grocery chain for 2 years and 4 months. He drove the blue van with the dented rear door, the one nobody else wanted, because the heater only worked if you hit the dash twice with the flat of your hand. He knew every pothole on the east side of the city. He knew which porches had dogs and which had lonely old women who kept him talking too long because he was the only face they'd see all day, and he never once hurried them. He had a way of listening that made people feel less alone. It was the only inheritance his mother had left him, and he'd never thought of it as worth much. He lived in a second-floor apartment with peeling wallpaper and a radiator that clanked like a man knocking to be let in. He lived there with his daughter, Ellie, who was 7 years old and missing her 2 front teeth, and drew pictures the way other children breathed. There were drawings taped to every wall of that apartment. Drawings on the refrigerator held by mismatched magnets. Drawings tucked into the visor of the blue van, so that when Daniel flipped it down against the morning sun, his little girl's crayon suns would fall into his lap. Her mother, Sarah, had been gone 2 years now. Cancer, the quiet kind that hides until it's too late to bargain with. She had been a checkout clerk at that very same Halston Market, aisle 4, and that was where Daniel had met her, buying a single apple because it was all he could afford the week he'd moved to the city with nothing. She'd rung it up and looked at him and said, "You look like a man who hasn't eaten a real meal in a while." And she'd been right. She was always right. When Sarah died, she left Daniel 2 things. She left him Ellie, and she left him a sentence she used to say when the bills came and the roof leaked and the world seemed determined to grind them down. "Dignity does not shout," she'd say. "It just keeps standing." He didn't fully understand it while she was alive. He was only beginning to understand it now. That Monday morning, Ellie came to the breakfast table with a folded piece of paper and a look on her face like she was carrying the crown jewels. "Daddy," she said, "I made you something for work." She unfolded it on the sticky tabletop next to his coffee. It was a drawing of the blue van. She'd gotten the dented door right, a little gray scribble of damage she'd faithfully reproduced. And beside the van she'd drawn Daniel, taller than the vehicle, with a wide crayon smile and arms that reached almost off the edge of the page. Above them both, in her careful, uneven letters, she'd written, "My dad helps everyone." Daniel looked at that drawing for a long moment. Something moved behind his ribs that he didn't have a name for. "Ellie," he said, "this is the best thing anyone's ever given me." "Better than the tie?" she asked, because last year for his birthday she'd drawn him a tie and made him wear the paper around his neck to work. And he had, all day, and no one had said a word, because there was something in his face that told them not to. "Better than the tie," he said, and he folded the drawing along its worn creases and slid it into the breast pocket of his jacket, over his heart, where he would keep it every single day of the week that was coming. though he did not know yet what that week would hold. Here is what he did know. The letter had come Friday. Ellie's school, a small private academy 2 blocks from their apartment, the one Sarah had dreamed of before she died, the one with the good teachers and the art program that let a child like Ellie become more than the sum of her circumstances. The school needed the term fees by the end of the coming week. $260. Daniel had $85 in the coffee can above the stove, and a paycheck coming Thursday that, after rent and the electric that was already late, would leave him $41 short. $41. But when you have counted every coin twice, when you have already put back the meat at the store and bought the beans, when you have already sold the good watch your father left you, $41 is a canyon. And Daniel stood at the edge of it that Monday and could not see the bottom. He did not tell Ellie. That was the first rule of being her father. She would never carry what he could carry for her. There was a woman who came into the Halston market that same week. She was older, gray coming in at her temples, and she wore a coat that had seen better decades and shoes that had been resoled more than once. She moved through the aisles slowly, watching things, watching how the shelves were stocked and how the staff spoke to the customers and how long the lines ran. Nobody looked at her twice. That was exactly what she wanted. Her name was Margaret Halston. She was 71 years old, and she owned all 38 stores in the Halston chain, and she had built the first one with her own 2 hands from a corner shop her husband had left her when he died young, the same way Sarah had died young, and Margaret had never forgotten what it was to count coins on a cold counter. She had come up quiet and stayed quiet, and lately something had begun to trouble her. The numbers were good, too good, in a way she'd learned to distrust over 50 years in business. Her district supervisor for the East Side, a sharp young man named Marcus Doyle, had been posting profits that outran every other district by a wide margin. He was ambitious, well-dressed, quick with a chart and a compliment. The board loved him. Margaret had learned that when a man's numbers are perfect, you should go and stand in his store on a cold evening and watch what those numbers are made of. So she'd taken off the good coat and the good shoes and put on the old ones she kept for exactly this. She had a rule she'd carried for half a century, though she never said it out loud. You cannot audit a company from a boardroom. You audit it by pretending to be the poorest person who walks through the door and seeing how you're treated. Marcus Doyle had a philosophy too. He believed the poor cost money. He believed the returns policy was too generous. The charity was a leak in the hull, that every hardship exception was $1 walking out the door. He'd quietly rewritten the store guidance for his district. No register overrides, no manager discretion, no exceptions for anyone who couldn't pay the full amount at the point of sale. Return a spoiled item without a receipt? Denied. Short $1 at the register? Put it back. It was legal. It was efficient. It was, Marcus would have told you with a bright, confident smile, simply good business. He had also, that week, decided which of his drivers to let go. The route numbers on the east side were down, and someone had to answer for it. And Marcus had never once ridden along to see why. He had a name circled on a list on his clipboard. The name was Daniel Heiress. Now watch how these lives came together, the way a river finds the sea whether it means to or not. Tuesday, Daniel finished his route an hour late because old Mrs. Okafor on Vine Street had fallen the day before, and there was no one to carry her groceries in from the porch. So he carried them, and put the milk in the fridge, and moved the phone to where she could reach it, and stayed 20 minutes he did not have. When he clocked out, Marcus was standing by the time clock with his clipboard. "You're behind," Marcus said. "3rd time this week." Mrs. Okafor fell, Daniel said. "I couldn't leave her groceries on the porch. She can't lift." "That's not your job," Marcus said. "Your job is the drop. Porch, ring, next stop. You're not paid to look after the customers." Daniel looked at him a moment. He was tired, and $41 short, and there was a drawing over his heart that said, "My dad helps everyone." He could have argued. He didn't. Dignity does not shout. "Understood," he said, and he went home to his daughter. That was the night Ellie asked the question he'd been dreading. She was in her nightgown, hair wet from the bath, and she stopped in the doorway of the kitchen while he was moving the same $85 from the coffee can to the table and back again as if counting it a fourth time might grow it. "Daddy," she said, "am I still going to school after this week?" He turned, made his face into the face she needed. "Where'd you hear a thing like that?" Bethany said her mom said the fees were due, and some kids might not come back. Daniel crossed the kitchen and knelt down so he was level with those serious brown eyes, her mother's eyes exactly. "You listen to me," he said. "You are going to that school. You are going to draw your pictures, and you are going to learn everything they've got to teach you. I don't want you thinking about money. Money is a grown-up worry, and I've got it handled. You understand me?" She studied him the way children do, looking for the crack in the reassurance. And because he believed it as he said it, because a father makes himself believe it, she didn't find one. "Okay, Daddy," she said, and she hugged him around the neck, and he held her, and over her small shoulder he looked at the $85 on the table and made a promise to a room that couldn't hear him. "She stays in that school, whatever it costs me." Wednesday came cold. The kind of cold that gets into a building's bones and won't leave. Daniel's last delivery of the day was to the Halston flagship on Halston Street itself, the biggest store in the chain, where he was to pick up an overflow load and run it to the East Branch before closing. He parked the blue van in the loading bay, flipped down the visor, and one of Ellie's paper Suns dropped into his lap. He smiled, tucked it back, and went inside to find the dock manager. That was where he first saw the woman in the thin coat. She was at Register 7, the express lane, and she had set down a loaf of white bread, a can of vegetable soup, and a small carton of milk. 3 items, maybe $5 altogether, and she was counting coins out of a worn change purse onto the belt, with hands that shook slightly. Whether from cold or age, Daniel couldn't tell. The cashier was a nervous young man named Tomas, and he'd called for the shift lead, and the shift lead had called for the man on duty. And the man on duty that evening, doing a spot inspection of his flagship store, was Marcus Doyle himself. "Ma'am," Marcus was saying, in the pleasant voice that made everything worse, "you're $1.20 short." "I have it at home," the woman said. Her voice was steady. There was no begging in it. "If you'll hold these behind the counter, I can bring the rest in the morning." "I'm afraid we don't do that anymore," Marcus said. "Store policy. We can't extend credit or hold merchandise. You're welcome to put something back." The woman looked at the 3 items on the belt. Bread, soup, milk. There was nothing to put back that wasn't the difference between eating and not eating. "Then I'll leave the milk," she said quietly, and began to reach for it. And Daniel, who had come to find the dock manager and instead found this, who had a drawing over his heart and a daughter at home and $41 he did not have, stopped where he stood. He did not think about it. That's the thing he'd say later, when it mattered, the only honest thing he could say. He did not calculate, he simply crossed the front of the store, reaching into his jacket, and the hand that came out held 2 crumpled dollar bills, 2 of the 85, $2 he needed more than almost anyone in that store needed anything. "Let her keep the milk," he said, and set the bills on the belt. Marcus turned, recognized him. Something flickered across the supervisor's face, annoyance, and beneath it, something that might, in a better man, have been shame. "This isn't your business, Heiress." "She's cold and she wants soup and milk," Daniel said. "It's $1.20. I've got it. Where's the harm?" "The harm," Marcus said, lowering his voice so only Daniel could hear it, "is that policy is policy. You start making exceptions, everybody's got a sad story. You want to give things away, do it on your own time, not in my building wearing my company's jacket." "Then I'll take the jacket off," Daniel said. He said it quietly. He didn't raise his voice, not once through any of it. But he reached up and unzipped the blue delivery jacket with the Halston logo on the breast, and he took it off, folded it over his arm, careful, even then, to keep Ellie's drawing safe in the pocket, and he stood there in his shirt sleeves in the cold store and looked Marcus in the eye. "Now I'm just a man buying a stranger a can of soup," Daniel said. "That allowed?" The woman in the thin coat was watching all of this. She had not said a word since she'd offered to leave the milk. She was watching the way she'd watched the shelves and the lines and the staff all week, with the eyes of someone taking a measurement no one knew was being taken. Marcus's jaw worked. He was aware of the small crowd forming, the cashier Tomas frozen, an old man in line behind, a mother with a stroller. He was aware that he'd been made, somehow, to look like the villain over $1.20, and he resented Daniel for it, with the sudden sharp feeling of a man who has been shown his own reflection. "You know what?" Marcus said. "Keep the soup, keep the jacket, you're done. This route's been under review for weeks anyway. Numbers are down. This just makes it easy. Clean out the van. You're terminated, effective now." A silence went through the front of the store. Daniel absorbed it the way he'd absorbed everything that week. There was no scene, no argument, no plea. He was $41 short before this, and now he was $41 short and without a job. And Friday was 2 days away, and his daughter's school was slipping through his fingers because he'd spent $1.20 on a stranger. He knew all of that in the space of one breath, and in the next breath he made his choice all over again, and it was the same choice. He turned to the woman, bagged her 3 items himself, quick and neat, the bread and the soup and the milk, handed the small paper sack across to her. "You have a good night, ma'am," he said. "Stay warm." And then, because it was the last thing his hands would do in that store, he set the folded jacket on the counter, laid it down gently as if it were something that had mattered to him, because it had, and walked out through the cold, bright doors into the parking lot. Behind him, the store stayed silent a moment longer than was comfortable. Then the old man in line reached down and picked up his own basket, and he looked at Marcus for a long, level second, and he set the basket on the floor and walked out empty-handed after Daniel. The mother with the stroller followed him with her eyes to the door, and Tomas, new and unsure of everything except what he'd just seen, let out a breath he'd been holding and had to turn his face to the register so no one would watch him blink. Daniel didn't see any of it. He sat in the driver's seat of the blue van for a moment before he turned the key, hit the dash twice with the flat of his hand out of habit, though he'd never drive the van again. There was a paper sun tucked behind the visor. Then he drove it around to the dock, left the keys with the confused night manager, and walked to the bus stop with his collar turned up against a wind that had teeth. The whole way home he thought about how he would tell Ellie. He decided he wouldn't. Not yet. Not until he'd found the next thing. A man protects his daughter from the canyon by standing between her and the edge of it, and Daniel intended to stand there as long as his legs held. What Daniel did not know, could not know, was what happened in the store after the doors closed behind him. The woman in the thin coat stood at register 7 for a long moment, holding her paper sack. Then she set it down on the counter, and she straightened, and something in her changed. The stoop went out of her shoulders. When she spoke, her voice carried the flat, quiet authority of someone who had given orders for 50 years and had never once needed to shout to be obeyed. "Young man," she said to Marcus, "what is your name?" Marcus, still riding the brittle confidence of having let someone go, barely glanced at her. "Ma'am, we're closing. You've got your items. You can—" "Your name," she said again, and this time, something in it made him stop. "Marcus Doyle," he said, "district supervisor. Is there a problem?" She reached into the worn change purse, passed the coins, and drew out a small card. She set it on the counter beside the folded blue jacket. Marcus looked down at it. It was a business card, cream stock, expensive, the kind that doesn't need much printing on it. It said one word above her name, Halston. "Margaret Halston," she said. "I built this store. I built all 38 of them. And I have spent this week walking through your district as the poorest woman who would fit through the door, because your numbers were too good, and I have lived long enough to distrust numbers that are too good." She let that sit. "Now I understand where the extra profit comes from. It comes from milk you would not let a cold woman carry home." The color left Marcus's face, the way water leaves a cracked glass. "Ma'am," he said, "Mrs. Halston, the board sets the profit targets. The district was expected to lead. The guidance was about protecting margin. The shrinkage numbers were, I was giving them what they asked for. The returns policy, the overrides, that was all within—" "Whose guidance?" she said. His mouth opened and closed. It was, "I implemented a district standard to reduce shrinkage, but it was—" "You wrote it," she said. "It was not company policy. It was yours. I have read every policy this company has ever issued, young man, because I wrote most of them myself. And nowhere in 50 years did Halston ever tell a clerk to take the milk out of a hungry woman's hands. She picked up the folded blue jacket from the counter, held it a moment, feeling the small weight in the breast pocket. That man, she said. The one you just let go. He had $2 in the world, or near enough. I watched him all week. I know his van. I know his route. I know he stays too long on the porches of old women who have no one else. He gave a stranger $1.20, and his job and his jacket, rather than watch her go cold. She looked at Marcus with eyes that had seen everything, and forgiven a great deal, but were not, tonight, in a forgiving mood. You let go of the only person in this building who understood what my company is for. Marcus said nothing. There was nothing left to say that would not make it worse. Reach into that pocket, Margaret said, holding out the jacket. Go on. He did. He drew out a folded piece of paper, soft at the creases from being folded and unfolded many times. He opened it. It was a child's drawing, a blue van with a dented door, a tall, smiling man, and in careful, uneven letters across the top, "My dad helps everyone." Margaret took it from his hands. She looked at it for a long time, and the store was very quiet, and young Tomas was pretending very hard not to let his feelings show, and not quite managing it. "Get me his file," Margaret said softly. "His name, his address, his phone if he has one." And Marcus, she folded the drawing along its worn lines, as carefully as Daniel himself would have. "You and I are going to have a long conversation tomorrow morning about every override you denied and every person you turned away in this district. Bring your records. Bring all of them." She looked up. "We are going to find every one of them, and we are going to make it right. That is not a request." "Yes, ma'am," Marcus said. His voice had gone very small. Daniel got home that Wednesday night and did not tell Ellie he'd lost his job. He made her grilled cheese and cut it into triangles the way she liked, and he listened to her tell him about the mural her class was painting for the school's spring show, a whole wall of it, and how her teacher had said Ellie had the best sense of color of any student she'd taught in years. He listened, and he smiled, and inside he was doing arithmetic. $83 now, after the 2. Paycheck Thursday, minus rent and the electric that was already late. Call it 30 over. 113. School wanted 260 by Friday. He was 147 short now, not 41, because a man who gives away his job over $1.20 has, by every practical measure, made things worse. He tucked Ellie into bed. She was asleep before he finished the second page of the book. He sat on the edge of her mattress a while, looking at the drawings on her walls, blue in the streetlight through the thin curtains. Then he went to the kitchen and did the thing he never let her see. He put his face in his hands, and for a little while the standing was very hard. Thursday morning he was up before dawn, showered and shaved and dressed in his one good shirt, going door to door to every other delivery outfit and warehouse and shipping company in a 10-mile radius, because a man does not stop standing just because the ground has moved. He filled out 4 applications. He was told twice that they'd call. He knew what that meant. He was walking back from the last of them, tired, his good shirt cold with sweat gone chill, when his phone rang. A number he didn't know. "Is this Daniel Reyes?" a woman's voice said. It was steady and unhurried, the voice of someone who has never once had to rush. "It is," he said. "Mr. Reyes, my name is Margaret Halston. I believe we met last night, though you didn't know my name at the time. I was the woman at Register 7, the one who was short $1.20. Daniel stopped walking. He stood on the cold sidewalk and did not understand, not yet. "Ma'am," he said, is everything all right? Did you get home okay?" And Margaret Halston, 71 years old, worth more money than Daniel could count in 3 lifetimes, felt something catch in her own throat, because his first question, his very first question, to the person he thought was a poor old woman calling him back, was whether she'd gotten home safely. "I got home just fine," she said. "Mr. Reyes, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to hear it all before you say anything. I own the Halston Company, all 38 stores. I was in that store last night, pretending to be without means, because I wanted to see how my company treated people who had nothing. And what I saw was a supervisor take the milk out of my hands. And I saw a delivery driver take off his own jacket and give up his job, rather than let it happen. She paused. That drawing is still in the pocket, Mr. Reyes. The one your daughter made. I've been looking at it since last night. Daniel could not speak. Marcus Doyle is no longer with the company as of this morning, she went on. The policies he wrote for that district, the ones that turned people away, are gone, reversed, effective immediately, and I've got a team going back through 6 months of records to find every person he denied, so we can make it right. That happened because of what you did. You should know that. 1 man, $2, and a stranger left cold. That's all it took to show me the rot. Dignity does not shout, Mr. Reyes, but it does get heard, eventually, by the right person, if the person keeps standing. Daniel's eyes stung in the cold. That was Sarah's line, he wanted to say. That was my wife's. He didn't. He just held the phone and breathed. Now, Margaret said, and her voice shifted, brisk, the voice of a woman who had run companies for half a century and enjoyed nothing more than putting things where they belonged. I want you back, but not on the van. I've been looking for something for a while, and I didn't know what until last night. I need people in this company who understand what it's actually for. I'm creating a position. Call it a community liaison. We'll name it properly later. Someone who trains our staff on how to treat the people who walk through our doors with nothing. Someone who rides the routes and finds the Mrs. Okafors and makes sure nobody falls through. The salary is more than double what you made driving. It comes with benefits, real ones. And Mr. Reyes, she said this gently, it comes with a signing consideration, because I understand you may have a pressing matter this week involving your daughter's school. Daniel's voice, when it finally came, was not quite steady. Ma'am, he said, I can't take charity. I gave that woman the $1 because it was right, not because... I know exactly why you gave it, Margaret said. That's the entire point. That's why it's not charity. Charity is what you give to make yourself feel better. What I'm offering you is a job, because you are the most qualified person for it I have met in 50 years of business. And the qualification is this: you did the right thing when it cost you everything, when no one who mattered was watching. Except someone was. Someone always is. She let that sit. Now, will you come in Monday morning and let an old woman who tricked you buy you a cup of coffee and show you your new office? Daniel stood on the sidewalk a long time, long enough that Margaret waited, patient, because she knew the sound of a man trying to keep his composure, and she respected it too much to fill the silence. Yes, ma'am, he finally said. I'll come in. One more thing, she said. That drawing. My dad helps everyone. She read it aloud slowly, the way you read something true. Your daughter's a better judge of character than my entire board of directors. What's her name? Ellie, Daniel said, and could not keep his voice from breaking on it. She's 7. Bring her Monday too, Margaret said. I'd like to meet the young lady who's been right about her father all along. And Mr. Reyes, the school matter. Consider it handled today. My assistant will call the academy within the hour. Your daughter isn't going anywhere. Some things in this world should never come down to $41. Daniel had not told her the number. He had never told anyone the number. And the fact that she knew it anyway, that she had somehow understood the exact shape of the canyon he'd been standing at the edge of, undid the last of the thing he'd been holding together since Wednesday night. He turned his face to the cold brick wall of a building on a gray street, and he wept, quietly, the way a man weeps when the weight comes off all at once. And on the other end of the line, Margaret Halston waited with him and said nothing, and understood everything. He went home. It was mid-afternoon, and Ellie was still at the school he'd been so sure she'd have to leave. He let himself into the quiet apartment with its walls of crayon suns and blue vans, and he stood in the middle of it and looked at all of it. All her small, bright faith, taped to the plaster, and he took the coffee can down from above the stove and set it on the table. $83. He didn't need it now, but he left it there anyway, because he never wanted to forget how close the edge had been, or how thin the coat is on the people who stand at it. When he picked Ellie up from school that afternoon, her teacher stopped him at the door with a strange expression. Mr. Reyes, she said. The office got a call this morning about Ellie's fees. She said it was taken care of, in full, for the whole year. And there was a note. The woman who called asked us to read it to Ellie. Did you arrange? I didn't, Daniel said. But I think I know who did. The teacher unfolded a slip of paper. It said, in careful transcription of a phone message, "Tell the young lady that her drawing was the best business decision anyone made this year. Tell her she was right about her dad. Keep drawing." Ellie, who had come to the door with her backpack and her spring mural stories, looked up at her father and then at the note she couldn't quite read yet, and asked what it meant. "It means," Daniel said, kneeling down in the doorway to be level with her mother's eyes, "that some things you draw come true." He pulled her into him and held her in the cold spring air, and over her shoulder he could see, through the classroom window, the great unfinished mural her class was painting. A whole wall of color, and it seemed to him just then that the world had more room in it than he'd believed on Wednesday night. Monday morning, Daniel put on his one good shirt, and he dressed Ellie in her best dress, the yellow one, and they took the bus downtown to the Halston headquarters, a building Daniel had passed 100 times in the blue van and never once imagined he'd walk into through the front doors. Margaret Halston met them in the lobby herself. Not in the thin coat and the resoled shoes, but she was. Daniel saw the same woman entirely, the stillness of her, the eyes that measured without judging. She crouched down, slow with her age but steady, to Ellie's level. "You must be Ellie," she said. "I've heard you're the best artist in your whole school." Ellie considered this with the seriousness of the young. "My teacher says I have the best sense of color," she corrected. "But Bethany is better at horses." Margaret laughed, a real laugh, surprised out of her. "Then I'll come to you for everything except horses," she said. She rose, slowly, and reached into her jacket, and drew out a folded piece of paper, soft at the creases. She held it out to Daniel. "I've had it 4 days," she said. "I confess I didn't want to give it back, but it belongs to you." Daniel took the drawing of the blue van and the tall, smiling man and the 4 words across the top. "My dad helps everyone." He looked at it and looked at the woman who'd carried it in her own pocket for 4 days, and he understood that a whole life can turn on $1.20 and a child's crayon, on the difference between the person who takes the milk and the person who won't. "I want to tell you something," Margaret said to him, quietly, while Ellie wandered a few steps off to inspect a large painting on the lobby wall. 50 years I've run this company. I've made a great deal of money, and I've forgotten, more times than I'd like to admit, what it was all for. And then a cold night comes, and a man in his shirt sleeves reminds you, you didn't do it for a reward. That's what makes you worth the reward." She looked at Ellie, small and yellow-dressed, and gazing up at the art. "Your wife," she said. "She taught you that line. Dignity does not shout." "How did you—" "Because you say it the way people say the things they got from someone they loved and lost," Margaret said. "I have a few of those myself." She put a hand on Daniel's arm, light, brief. She'd be proud. "I didn't know her, but a man is the truest thing his wife leaves behind, and she left a good one." Daniel could not answer. He didn't need to. Some things don't require it. The years that followed were kinder to Daniel Reyes than the years before had been. He did the work Margaret gave him, and did it well, and trained hundreds of Halston employees across all 38 stores to see the person before the transaction, to hold the milk, to keep the porch light people from falling through. The district that had been squeezed dry under Marcus Doyle became, within 2 years, the most loyal in the chain, not because its numbers were forced, but because people remembered who was kind to them when they were down, and came back, and brought their children. Ellie stayed in her school, and painted her walls, and grew up knowing that the world, for all its cold evenings, contained people who would take off their own coats. Margaret, who had no children of her own, became something like a grandmother to that little girl, and kept every drawing Ellie ever gave her, a growing folder of them in her desk that she'd take out sometimes, late, when the numbers wearied her, to remember what the numbers were for. But the point of the story was smaller and harder than any of that, and Daniel understood it standing in that cold store with his jacket over his arm. He hadn't known, when he set those $2 on the belt, when he took off the jacket, when he walked out into the wind $41 short, and now jobless besides. He had not known that anyone who mattered was watching. He'd believed, as far as he could see in that moment, that doing the right thing was going to cost him his daughter's school and his livelihood and everything he'd fought to hold together, and that no one would ever know or care. And he'd done it anyway. Dignity does not shout. Sarah had said it over leaking roofs and unpaid bills, and Daniel had thought it meant something about pride, about keeping your chin up. He understood, in the end, that it meant something quieter and far more demanding. It meant you do the right thing in a low voice, in an empty room, with the milk and the cold and the canyon at your back, and you ask nothing for it. And sometimes, not always, the world is not so tidy as that. But sometimes, someone is standing at register 7 in a thin coat, watching, taking a measurement no one knew was being taken, and what they measure is the whole of you. Ellie is grown now. She's an artist, a real one, the kind whose work hangs where people pay to see it. And in every show she's ever put on, in a corner where you might miss it if you weren't looking, she hangs one small framed piece that isn't for sale. It's a child's drawing, soft at the creases from being folded and unfolded 1,000 times. A blue van with a dented door, a tall man with his arms thrown wide, and 4 uneven words across the top. That turned out to be the truest thing anyone in this story ever said. My dad helps everyone. He did. On the cold evening, when it cost him everything, and he thought no one would ever know.